welcome to T+T Doubleshot. I'm Trent Bell. I'm an architectural photographer, and this is Tim,
studio manager and retoucher
extraordinaire, aka the Wizard.
I guess. I don't know if I like that yet.
You gotta
I'm not sold on it yet.
In post. You gotta put a little like boop, like boop. Wizard hat.
Yeah. Bing. I need some of your sound effects.
Right.
Your sound effect library.
Yeah, I bought some thing on iTunes. It's like 300 different general sounds that you can use for editing that I've pulled a lot from.
Yeah, I know. So you can make those go a long way.
It feels like 1950s sound effects from like old cartoons and stuff, but it's pretty cool. But
am I sitting behind you? Kind of. Just slide up a little bit.
Where's that, Tim? Okay. So today we're talking about 2100. Well, let's see. It's a standalone, ground up new build.
Name on it anyway. So
look at that. Okay, 2100L. It was a ground up new build for a client in DC, OTJ. And we've done a lot of work with them. They do amazing work, and we're very happy to be able to work with them off and on. And this one, let's see. The approach was interesting in that we came down and did, I think, exteriors first, and then had come back later to go through the project.
I think that was like a year prior. It was like kind of like you were shooting something else, and then
it's kind of like
a scouting trip.
Finished up the exterior, and we had done just a couple images on the exterior to help them just get their kind of marketing piece in there, and then we had come back and finished up like shooting the interior and stuff. An interesting kind of backstory and everything else to working with these clients. The thing I have found is that as an architectural photographer, when you're starting out, you want to connect your thing with someone else potentially starting out that you see having a lot of potential. And as they grow and you do a good job, you'll grow. So with this client, our primary client really with OTJ is their marketing person, Pascal Molina, and he's gone through several different firms because of his talent. Someone else says, hey, you're great, you want to come? And so he'll eventually move to another firm, not saying he'll leave OTJ, but when we started working with him, he was at one firm and then another firm he's showing talent. Yeah. They come for him. And, people change jobs. And
small side note. We our podcast, Architecture, Design, and Photography, Pascal is on one of those episodes, so you can check that out at adppodcast.com. Or you can scroll through YouTube, and it's somewhere down there. So
now's where
if you want to hear from Pascal directly, that's the best way to do it.
The little star that comes in and goes, dun, 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 or
Actually, I don't know that wasn't a video because that was over Zoom, I believe. So I think it's just an audio.
But I have found that the ability to get in front of really good architecture kind of grows with you as your clients grow. So just a side note, as you're starting out, pay attention to the kind of clients you're getting and that they align with your vision and that you see that they have talent and that they're going somewhere, because if they're not going anywhere, you're probably not going anywhere. So just something to think about. So 2100L, downtown location in DC, essentially. Not a lot of ability to get really far back and shoot exteriors. You can get down a street and kind of see it, but you have to go through all the different places where you can shoot this from. This isn't my favorite light on this building. It feels a little more like I call it morning mist. But
what is your favorite light?
I just like light sources that are coming at you a little bit more. That way you see shadow and highlight. This one to me is just not quite enough. You can feel like the light's coming from behind camera. And I just never like that as much. It just falls a little flat. On a detail like this, the light's coming from left forward. You can see the shadows in the leaves and how the shadows and stuff are created on the wall of detail. And when you're in tighter on a detail, to have that ability to see, the shadow, the highlight, that depth, it just gives you more information about the space, and the feel of it is nicer. And then we had also, when we were there, they have this little courtyard between this building and the next one that they had actually done some renovations and such to that brick building next to it that worked out well. This one, at least the light here is coming from right of frame, so you get a little bit more depth there. Still not my most favoritist kind of light direction for an exterior composition, but it looks all right. I like it. This one, it's all kind of in a shaded area, the thing we're focusing on. So it's a little distracting over to the right with how bright it is over there, but that's kind of uncontrollable for a daylit image at this point. And the difficulty with this is that the actual doors that you would walk through there are not in the same parallel plane as the face of the building. So you can see this kind of trapezoid effect above the entrance there, which from coming back a little bit further and doing the overall is a little disorienting. And as an architectural photographer, it's always like,
I remember in post trying to straighten this one out, and I was like, I don't know which line to go with.
This is going weird. Yeah. Interior details, again, they did a really nice job on this, and very, in my opinion, kind of more European details going on here. And a classic American approach with downtown buildings sometimes, or large commercial buildings, is to like hide all the details within like an aluminum wrap or something else. Right. And this, to see the details and the connection, and I thought that was really pretty. This is kind of just kind of a throwaway image of this building next to the real building that we were shooting. But they had done work on this building, and it is kind of interesting how there's this old brick building surrounded by these newer buildings.
And it kind of feels like Boston almost. You see that a lot down there.
Boston, or the little house on the movie Up.
Oh yeah,
yep. So we had a few in there that we had done for them that I like the juxtaposition of those. But then on the interior of this building, a lot of conference rooms, office spaces, and everything else. Getting these tables to line up correctly is always fun. And a lot of times we have to ask the wizard to do the final touches.
How do you think about when you're going inside a building like that? It's such a big building. Like, where are you going? I mean, that's thought out ahead of time, but how do you decide? I guess because you're not going to go to every floor, right?
I'm just noticing the 2100 L.
Oh, yeah, it's built. Yeah, it's clever. Now you can't unsee it.
Yeah. It's mostly depending on your client. Like sometimes a commercial client will only be involved on the interior for a specific office space. Other times they did the entire building and its office space, or sometimes they just did the build out of the exterior with raw space that other firms come in and fill out the interior. So this one, they were involved in both. So we were down there separate times doing different things. And how we approach the interior, either depending on the client, is just like, Trent, what do you see? What do you think we should shoot? Or typically when a design firm gets to this level, they know what they want.
Right.
And so at that point, it's less that I'm weighing in on exactly what we should and shouldn't shoot.
Right.
It's more so they're saying, all right, we know we want this, and this. And that's, in my opinion, a nice thing to work with a client that knows what they want. So it eliminates options that you don't have to struggle with.
Right, yeah.
So you can focus on the things
Spend more time
they know they need. So that to me is really helpful. This space, really beautiful space on the very top of the building, very hard to shoot. Not because of the design or anything else, but just the layout of it and everything else for graphic presentation through a 2D medium like the sensor of a camera was, for some reason, it was just a little more difficult. But we finally found that place where it worked, and there was a lot of issue with camera height, foreground, and reading the background or the what we're focusing on, and it was very difficult to find this composition. But when we found it, we were like, yes! We were all very elated. But there's a lot of furniture to move around and kind of cheat into the places we needed it to kind of emphasize the quality of the space. So That's always in any time in a shoot, you'll find that sometimes they're super easy and every single shot just comes out like, wow, these are just going seamlessly, no problem.
Right, yeah.
And then other times it's like you get to one that looks like, oh, this is gonna be easy, and then you start to shoot it and you're like, whoa, something.
Right, yeah. Let's think about this a little longer.
Yeah, and the thing that Pascal and I have found is that at the beginning of any shoot, it's kind of like you want to warm up, like you're warming up your creative approach, just like you'd warm up your muscles before playing a basketball game or whatever
you're not
else.
Jumping into this one as the first one.
You're
downstairs.
Pick a small or just very, very easy image to start with to warm up is the idea. I
kind of do that in post-production too.
Oh, really?
I just know looking at the images like that one's going to be difficult. I'm going to start with the details.
Let's get in the zone before I jump
into
on
the easier ones, and then for some reason I leave the harder ones for last. I don't know if that's the best approach, but it's just it feels good to accomplish a good set of images right away, and then I can spend my time on the harder ones later. But
that's interesting.
I don't know if that's like warming up the creative muscle or whatever for me, but if I think of it that way or not.
I would imagine so. We could do a whole podcast on like how creativity works and what is the idea of warming up that we can apply from sports to a creative endeavor. That'd be interesting.
You might pull a creative muscle or something if you're not like, stretched out.
I can't do that anymore. And then actually turning back the other way, this is like from the last image we were shooting from one side of the room. Now we're at the other side of the room.
Is that you're just turning around almost?
No, this composition here was shot from behind that table.
Oh, okay. You're way back there then. Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you'll notice that there's only one chair here on this image, and there's two chairs on that image. You know, you're always kind of just adjusting a little bit to figure things out. This whole wall on the right here is super cool. It's like a whole leather wall with stitch, it was nice. And then, figuring out in here where to put people. Like if we had them in this main seating area, it would be a little like keeping you from being in the photo, or I don't know. But this highlight and everything on there, it was just a perfect place to put someone walking through. Luckily, we had her walk through, and it just worked how she was holding the computer and like that gate and everything else that she's going through there. That's what you're looking for, in my opinion. It worked nicely. And then kind of put some people in the back doing business type stuff. Worked well. But again, this room was not easy for some reason. And I would think it would be easy because of all the exposure to light. You have a very soft but directional light from, two sides that just fills in. Lighting wise, very easy, but for some reason the composition was difficult.
What's your favorite technique, or what is your technique for when you have lifestyle in the image? Like act natural is a very hard thing to just tell someone to do. Is there like pretend to say this, or you know what I mean? Like,
so a lot of times
I've heard you say, just pretend you have like a Rubik's Cube, and you kind of just.
So if there's two people interacting, a lot of times they'll just sit there and like move their lips. They won't engage. Like, just people are not used to being in front of a camera, and it freezes them and it makes them do weird things.
Right.
They'll walk weird. They'll talk weird. They'll behave weird.
Right.
And I get it. It took a little bit of time for me to get in front of a camera and get over this idea that everyone's going to be watching you, and how arrogant for you to put yourself in front of a camera.
Right.
Like, you're there's this weird internal conversation of that aspect, but when you realize you're like, I'm just talking. I'm anything else, but anyone can listen. Like, that's the weirdness of this. So what's the big deal? For people walking through, generally the walking through, since I usually shoot the lifestyle at around 1/10 of a second. That gives it just the right blur, I find.
For the normal sort of gait pace. Yeah.
So you'll see here, her foot, looks like she has a crippled dog foot on her right leg. But you understand that it's, a foot in motion, and the camera views that differently. I mean, like, it generally looks like her right foot is a dog's foot, and her left foot is a normal human foot. But, anyways, the perfect gait there would have been if this foot was coming down in front of the other foot, and it's like you at the bottom of the person in the ground, you get like the point of a triangle.
Right, yeah.
But I thought this one worked really well. Her arm was in the perfect spot, and she had a slightly blurred but very pleasant look on her face, so it's not too confronting or anything else. And then, yes, I'll a lot of times just tell people to talk about whatever, but just pretend you're solving a Rubik's Cube the entire time.
Yeah.
And so inevitably you
You're
catch
working through
them.
A problem or something.
Yeah, it looks like they're actually talking about a concept and engaged. And that can work really well.
You can kind of almost see like,
he's
he has
totally
a Rubik's Cube in his hand.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you just can't.
I can almost guarantee that's what he was pretending to do.
Yeah.
But engaging the hands like that in that kind of situation is really good.
Right. Yeah.
To get people to walk naturally, a lot of times I'll have them just take their phone and put it up to their head like they're talking.
Give them something else to focus on.
Right. You want to distract them from walking.
Right.
Because they know how to walk.
Or you almost want to say like, okay, we're not going to shoot here, but just walk back over here. And so if they have the idea that we're not shooting, but
sometimes you want to play a trick on them and say like, all right, you're going to start over there on the next one, but just if you can come over here. And then when they walk, they walk normally. And you like try and
it's the mindset of like, well, I'm not on camera now or whatever. And so I can just relax, you know?
I think a lot of it is like when you ask someone to walk through frame, what they end up doing is thinking about how they're walking, which no one ever does.
Right.
So if you give them that assignment, they're going to do it like they never do it.
Right.
But if you give them an assignment to do something that they, typically always do, that is far more rudimentary, like just holding a phone to your face and talking as you walk through, that doing the other thing kind of allows them like, well, I walk all the time. I'm going to put that on autopilot.
Put that secondary.
Yeah, and this is the thing I'll focus on. And just that, lets the rest of the body kind of move how it normally moves.
That's interesting. We could probably have a whole episode on
how to trick people
how to
into
think
good
about lifestyle and how to coach and
Yeah, and I mean the portraits is way harder. Getting people to move and interact, but there's such that like facial communication that comes down to all those hundreds, thousands of different muscles that communicate weird things.
Right.
That's the hard one.
A psychologist or something would be a good photographer because they can understand people and like put them at ease or whatever.
Yeah, someone or just that has that knowledge, but also the skill to be able to interact and play that kind of chess game ahead of them to know how to get them to react. Then they had this little table that you definitely do not want to drop anything in. That'd be cool if there's like plugs in there or something. Maybe I wonder
in the center.
It wouldn't look as nice, but
it's kind of like one of those like river tables. But
it doesn't. Typically, it's filled with like resin or something.
Yeah. I don't think. In this case, it was just.
It's not, but it was a cool table. Again, shooting outside, I waited until the light was coming at us to some degree. In my opinion, it just looks better. And anytime you can get backlit grass into an image, it's going to look nice.
In
my opinion.
That is nice.
Now, I don't like how much of the back of the sofa thing we're seeing here. In retrospect, I probably would have moved that. I would have pivoted it clockwise on its back left foot so it opens up, allows this table in the middle to be a little more open, and then at that point maybe put some lifestyle in there. I think that's what I would have done. And then this was in the entrance lobby, and they had this space to the kind of side of the lobby where they could set it up as an art gallery off and on. And when we shot, there was no art in there, so we had the wizard put art in and post. I'm gauging his response to wizard because we might have to move into just referring to Tim as the wizard. So Pascal had brought this bowl to kind of act as a piece to just be in there, and then we had selected art from other shoots that we had the
texture
rights and
on the wall here. You can really read
the texture there, and then you did a really good job of dealing with this yellow and where the light and everything was there. But this idea of the textured walls coming through and the consistent color and everything else, really well done. I like that. We shot off a bunch of lights inside of there to get that feel, and your ability to put that all together in post made it look
looking through glass.
Nice.
It's kind of hard to tell that's the case, but you can see the
trick to making glass disappear is to make everything else around the glass as dark as possible and make inside of the room as bright as possible without making the inside of the room so bright that it bounces off the outside pieces of anything that could then reflect back onto the glass again, because then you just create the problem again. sheets and lights and lights and sheets, black sheets, white sheets. Again, same deal here. We had smoothed out all these walls and everything else by putting a strobe hitting the ceiling. Gives it a really calming, whatever effect. Someone's taking their mining cart.
Someone's moving out.
Yeah, right. And then they had this interesting kind of metalwork detail all around the building. They're super cool. I wonder, how many birds and insects will make their homes in there.
But gets full of nests.
Who knows?
Time.
But it's super.
It kind of looks like
neat.
That bird's nest like they had at the Olympic Games.
Oh, right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's that same kind of structure.
Yeah. The Beijing Olympics.
Yeah,
right?
that's what it was.
Then again, another outside shot here. This one we waited till way late in the day, and there was tons and tons and tons and tons of cicadas on this shoot, which was kind of fun. We got a pretty awesome close up of a big old red-eyed dude. But we had set this shot up in the afternoon, looked at the lighting and said, lighting's going to be way better later. Let's wait till later. So I think we went and got lunch or dinner and then came back and shot this around 8 or 9, whatever time, it was later in the day. And then we were up on top there for that. And then we came down and then we started shooting here. So this light to me just looks so much better than that light,
Yeah, I agree.
From there to there, it's just you've got a lot more of a story to tell with these different areas and everything else. But again, you probably don't want to tell too much of a story either. If you go overboard, it's going to get way too busy. To me, this is interesting. I don't like how much of a contrast there is on this corner right here. This blue comes all the way down, but here it only comes to there. And that's just because of where you're reflecting your vision. And, it is what it is. But I think it would feel a little calmer if this line happened to be closer to that line. If the buildings that you're seeing over here were a little taller,
right, yeah,
it would reflect that a little more. But that's,
So we're into the dusk images now, and are you just repeating, thinking of repeating a lot of the same compositions from earlier in the day?
Yeah, what you'll do.
Those are the ones. So
right, earlier in the day, we had just gone a low light situation, and by that I mean the sun was low in the sky
here.
So we went around the building and saw all the things of composition that worked regardless of where the sun was at. This is our scouting part of it. But each one we capture is in focus and bracketed, so we can pull it out to get post-produced later if we want, or just not use it and use it for scouting. And from doing that earlier in the day, then you're all right, at dusk, looking at these images that we already took, these 4 are going to be the ones that we want to do. So came back. This is one of the obvious ones. Just wanted to get this lamppost off the building. Unavoidable not have that on there. And then the Pascal is not a fan of the long light streaks, so we did not incorporate that in here as much as possible, and just had a tiny bit of blur to the cars, which I like. It just gives the sense of motion and activity going on, but not exaggerated streak.
I don't know if I'm a fan of the long light streaks either. I kind of like these little short ones here that I don't know.
If I had a real clean one that came down and around,
it has to be.
If it worked, it worked.
Perfectly frames it somehow, or just sort of those wisps through the frame. I don't like those as much, but
yeah, I'm honestly not sure how much I like him because I respect Pascal's opinion so much. Yeah, right. The fact that he doesn't like it makes me think maybe I don't like it because he knows what he's talking about and he's really good. So that's a hard one, but. I don't like this perspective as much as the one we got in the morning back there. I like that one better.
It's more dramatic.
Just for the light direction compared to that one. But this is still really beautiful that you can see the whole street scene and everything in the building, but it's behind that detail and it's super pretty. I'm happy with it. I just like the other one better. I like the transparency we see from this perspective, this corner over here seen through. I like seeing the building across, the canopies uplit.
And the left side just kind of almost disappears because the other side reflects into it and it almost just looks like another building.
It makes it look like another building that goes into this building. And then you see the building across the street, but then you have this kind of green seen in aspect here. And I like this one a lot. This is the one that was hard. We were just going from that last shot back over to the corner And I saw this, and there was a big old electrical box there, I believe. And I was just like, oh, crud, hold on 1 second, one more. And I just jumped up there and got this. And I really like this, but you can see how much the building is off as far as like the relation of one side of the street to the other.
Right.
With how that building goes. So, and then also the horizontal line at the entrance and everything else slope back. And so there's a little oddity in that, but it's just what the design is. It's just we're always trying to get everything at like vertical or perpendicular and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I really, really like that one too. And that's pretty much it for this one. I think from there, I mean, what else is there to talk about for the overall of this project before we jump into going over this image, right? And then probably that image. We'll be going over interior and exterior.
If I was a play architectural photographer getting into the game and wondering or having, I guess my question might be, is there any consideration ever for like, let's shoot this building from like a block away on like a rooftop or something, like that kind of a composition? Like, do you ever think about that? Or
yeah, it's definitely an option. All the other buildings around this building didn't seem, as I remember, to have, you'd want to be just about middle of this building. You'd want to be about that height, right? To give a, like, if you were thinking of the building as a face, you wouldn't want to be way down low staring up the nose. That's like the least desirable place to be in many ways. It can make it feel like if you lower your perspective to whatever you're looking at, it gives more of this communication of awe.
Right.
And I think that's just reflective of childhood and how everything's bigger than you. If you can get halfway up that, you can do that sometimes if you bring like a massive like light tripod or a stand like we do sometimes, but it's can be very difficult to do that in a downtown situation. If you're only shooting exteriors, it's a very easy thing to do. But if you're shooting the entire building, and you just have to gauge what your shot list is, the budget, and the amount of time available. So I wouldn't mind getting this one at least at the height of the ceiling of the lobby. Like if you could get up that high, I think that could be interesting. But you might get up there and realize like, man, that's not as good.
Not so interesting. Yeah.
It's a very difficult subjective process.
I guess in a city, everything's so close and packed tight that, getting that longer perspective, there's a lot to consider,
Yeah. And it's just, as soon as you start to move back this way, a light pole comes in. And then the corner from over here starts to come in, and then the building just to our right starts to come in on the right. Like everything just starts to squeeze in. So you have to have that ability to get a clear shot down a street, which is just not usually an option most of the time. So it's just it always depends on the situation of the site and where you're at.
Yeah. All right.
So
you answered my question.
Oh, that's good.
What else?
What else? Standalone building, one of their first ones that they've done completely interior and exterior, which is a huge thing for a client.
With an exterior, and you've got like city life, happening all around. Like how much do you wait around for that to happen before you're like, well, I think we have enough to pull something out of? I mean, are you shooting for another 10 minutes of just like, you've already got the building, you're just doing the
with
cars
this,
or people, or
with this, it's always like a pulse because of how the traffic lights work. They'll build up and then they'll come through. And a lot of times it's only like 5 or 6 cars that come through as a pack because they build up and then go and stop. And so whenever I'm doing this, I'm on a 2-second timer, because I don't want to be touching the camera as you release it, because it's a longer shutter speed. So I'll do 2 minutes. I'll just kind of steady it for a second, gently take my hands off. And then you have to time that to like however long your shutter speed is for each image. And then like plan the 2 seconds to then start the dark medium light exposure.
Right.
So it's a lot of times you're missing it and you're just getting the tail end of cars, and you're like, and then you have to wait for another light and do it again. And then the light's disappearing quickly. And
so a couple iterations of a light, maybe like 2 or 3, you might think, I think we've got
a lot of times. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll shoot the top and bottom of the image if how close you are to the building requires that, for one, which this one did. And then I'll go to the bottom half of the image and I'll turn the camera to not doing a bracket,
right? Yeah,
but doing like a lifestyle capture. Like I still find that 1/10 of a second is good for cars and everything too, unless they're really moving. And so then it's a matter of just putting it on motor drive, knowing that you have everything else crisp. You can, kind of leave your hand on it and do that if you want to do it that way. So sometimes I'll do that, and then you don't have to deal with the 2-second timer and all that and blah, blah, blah. So.
Yeah, that works.
It works.
It works. I don't think I have any more questions.
All righty. Well, that is pretty much everything for the general approach to this one.
Yep.
We're going to get a little bit more specific on this image and then the interior image on the 2 following videos.
So stay tuned and like and subscribe, and look forward to seeing you in part 2. Yeah.
Adios.
Adios.